This is Mrs. Wainwright's Math Class, Chapter 3, Lesson 4B, Rounding Decimals to a Specific Place Value. Today's learning target: by the end of this lesson, you should confidently be able to say, I can use place value to round decimals to a given place. We will follow the steps for this lesson, and of course for this worksheet, we need to show all work as shown in the video, but the goal is to eventually be able to do this mentally and in your head. When you feel you're ready to do this, mentally and in your head, see a teacher. We will give you 3 problems, and if you can do them all correctly, we will exempt you from showing the rounding work. Let's take a look and see how this is done with example number 1. Number 1 says round to the nearest tenth. The number is 13 and 7,584 ten-thousandths. So our first step is to rewrite our given number in the center of the page with room above it and below it. So I write 13.7584 in the middle of my page. It tells me to round to the nearest tenth, so the next thing I need to do is find my tenths column. How do I find any column? Well, I find where the ones and the decimal column is, and I highlight it. This is my ones and my decimal. There's only one 1, there's only one decimal. To the left of the 1 would be the tens, so to the right of the 1, this is the 1, to the right is the tenths with the THS on the end. So this digit, the 7, is in the tenths column. If I need to round to the nearest tenth, then I'm going to underline the 7 and everything to the left of it. So I'll extend that highlight, that underline from the 7 all the way to the very left-hand side. Now this is the number that I'll be rounding to. So on the left-hand side, I'm going to copy everything that's underlined. 1, 3, decimal, 7. If there are any whole numbers to the right of my underline, I have to change them to 0. But if the only digits to the right of my underline are decimal numbers, I can just simply drop them. And I've underlined the tenths column, which is a decimal column, so everything to the right of that, the 5, the 8, and the 4, are all decimal numbers, so I don't need to copy them. Okay, now I'm going to move to the right side. On the right side, I add 1 to the last underlined digit. So I have 3.7 underlined. I'm going to add 1 to that last digit. 7 plus 1 equals 8, so that last digit turns to an 8, and I'll write that new number up above. So it's 1, 3, decimal, and again the 7 plus 1 is 8, so that turns to the 8. Now that I have my 2 choices, it's either going to round down to 13.7 or up to 13.8. I circle the number to the right of the underline now, and that tells me whether I round down or up. That's a 5. So what am I going to think? Well, when I'm deciding whether I round down or up, I think about island trees. Remember 0, which is like kindergarten, 1st, 2nd, 3rd, and 4th grades are in one of the little kids' schools, so that would round down. But 5th grade, 6th grade, 7th grade, 8th grade, and 9th grade are in one of the big kids' schools, so that would round up. My circle digit is a 5. So I'm going to think, well, 5 is in the big kids' schools, so I have to round up. So 5 tells me that I round up to the number on the right side, the 13.8. So I circle that because that is my final answer. The question said round to the nearest tenth, and 13 and 7,584 ten-thousandths to the nearest tenth is 13 and 8 tenths. Please stop the video and complete worksheet number 1 right now. Remember, go back to this example and follow along with me step by step for your problem. Let's try example number 2. Number 2 says round 4 and 7,536 ten-thousandths to the nearest hundredth. So again, I'm going to rewrite my number in the center of the page with room on top, 4.7536 in the center of the page. My directions tell me to round to the nearest hundredth, so I need to figure out where the hundredths column is. And I know that the hundredth, TH, tells me it's a decimal number, so I'm going to find my 1 and my decimal because there's only one 1 and there's only one decimal. I'll label it O because this is the ones column. Well, what comes after 1? Tenth with the TH because it's a decimal side. After tenth, ones, tens, hundreds, or hundredths with a TH. So this is my hundredths column. That 5 is in the hundredths column. If I'm rounding to the nearest hundred, I underline that 5 because it's in the hundredths column and everything to the left of that. Now on the left side, I copy everything that I underlined, which is going to be 4, decimal, 7, 5. And if the rest of the digits are whole numbers, they turn to 0. But if they're decimal numbers, I just ignore them. And that 3, 6 are decimal numbers. They're to the right of my decimal, so I will ignore them. Okay, on the right-hand side, I'm going to add 1 to the very last underlined digit. My very last underlined digit is the 5, so 5 plus 1 I know is going to equal 6. So this number will be 4.76. I circle the digit to the right of the underline, that's the 3, and that number tells me whether I round down or up. And I think 3, is it in a little kid's school or a big kid's school? 3 is in a little kid's school, so I will round down. So this 3 tells me to round down to 4.75 or 4 75 So I have rounded 4 and 7,536 10,000ths to the nearest hundred, which is 4 75. Please stop the video and complete worksheet number 2 right now. Example note number 3 shows a way that sometimes you'll see a problem. Sometimes rather than telling you the place to round to, the directions will simply say rounds to the place of the underlined digit. They give you a number and one digit is underlined. Here we have 458 and 943 thousandths, and the 8 is underlined. So it pretty much works the same way. I want to round to the place of the underlined digit, so I'm going to underline the digit that's already underlined and everything to the left of it. On the left side, I copy the entire underlined digit, 4, 5, 8. I check and see if the digits after the underlined are whole numbers, because if they are, I turn them to zeros, and if they're decimal numbers, I can ignore them. And I see just to the right of my 8 is my decimal, so everything to the right of that, the 9, the 4, and the 3 are all decimal numbers, therefore I ignore them. On the right side, I add 1 to my very last underlined digit, so 8 plus 1 is going to equal 9, so instead of 4, 5, 8, I will have 4, 5, 9. Now that I have my two choices, I circle the digit to the right of the underlined digits, that's a 9, and I'm going to think, is 9th grade in the little kids' schools or the big kids' schools? Well, 9th grade is in the big kids' schools, so I will round up. 9 tells me to round up, which will be 459. So 458 and 943 thousandths rounds to 459. I rounded this number to the ones column. Since the ones column, the 8 was underlined. Please stop the video and complete worksheet number 3 right now. Let's take a look at number 4. Sometimes you'll be asked to round money, and sometimes it will say round to the nearest cent. When it tells you to round to the nearest cent, they really want you to round to the nearest 1 cent. So you need to find the 1 cent column. So again, I notice that there's a dollar sign, which tells me there's money. I'm going to find my ones column, which is my $1 column and my decimal. And I'm going to figure out what my columns are next to that. I'm going to want to start my underlining at the 1 cent column. So I know we have money, and to the right of that we have our change. So the 3 would be in the 10 cent column, and the 9 would be in the 1 cent column with money, right? Because we don't have less than a penny. So that 5 is really in the 1,000th cent column, and we don't have that. So I'm going to round to this 1 cent column, which is the number 9. Therefore, I will underline the 9 and everything to the left of it. So as always, on the left side, I copy everything that's underlined. $, 2, 5, decimal, 3, 9. If anything to the right of the underlined is a whole number or a whole dollar, I need to change it to a 0. But if it's decimals or cents, I can ignore it. And that 5 is not a whole dollar. It's definitely in the decimal column. Therefore, I will ignore it. Okay, when I move on to the right side, I'm going to add 1 to the very last digit. My very last digit is a 9. 9 plus 1 is 10, and that's double digits, so that's not going to work. So how can I solve this one? Well, when your last digit is a 9 and you have to add 1 to it, this is what you're going to think. 9, a single digit, plus 1 gives me 10, which is a double digit, and I can't put 2 digits in one column. So what if I think about this? What if I think about the whole number with the digit next to it, the 39? What's 39 plus 1? Well, 39 plus 1 equals 40. Right? 39 is 2 digits, 40 is 2 digits, so I didn't change the amount of digits. So when I have a 9, I'm going to think of the whole number including the digit next to it. 39 plus 1 is 40. So I will write $2, 5, decimal, 40, since we changed the 39 to a 40. Now, as always, I circle the number to the right of the underline. That's the 5, and this is going to tell me whether I round down or up. Well, a 5th grader goes to the big kids' school, therefore I'm going to round up. 5 tells me to round up to $25.40. Please stop the video and complete worksheet number 4 right now. And our last example is example number 5. It says round $534.29 to the nearest dollar. Well, in example number 4, it told me to round to the nearest cent, and that was the 1 cent. This tells me to round to the nearest dollar, so that will be the $1 column. So I'll rewrite my number in the center of the page with room on top, $534 decimal 29. I will underline the $1 column, decimal, and there's my $1 column. Underline the $1 column and everything to the left of it. On the left side, I copy exactly what's underlined, which is $534, and I'll put my decimal in. On the right side, I add 1 to the very last underlined digit, so 4 plus 1 will equal 5. So I'll have $535. This is either going to round down to $534 up to $535. I circle the digit to the right of the underlines, which is a 2. Remember, if it's a 0, 1, 2, 3, or 4, it rounds down. A 5, 6, 7, or 8, or 9, it rounds up. This is a 2, which is in the little kid school, so this number will round down. So the 2 tells me I round down to $534. Please stop the video and complete worksheet number 5 right now. So let's review. We follow the steps for the lesson and the worksheet, but the goal is to eventually be able to do this mentally. Whenever you feel that you're ready to do this, see a teacher. We'll give you 3 problems in class, and if you can solve them correctly, we'll let you know that you personally are exempt from showing the work. How do you figure it out, and how do you show the work? Well, you take the number that's given to you, write it in the center of the page with room above it and below it. When it tells you a place to round to, like in this case the nearest hundredth, you need to figure out where the hundredths place is. TH means it's a decimal number, so again we highlight our 1 and our decimal because there's only one 1 and there's only one decimal. And then to the right of that would become this is the ones, next would be the tenths, the next would be the hundredths. So if that's the hundredths column, that's the digit that I underline, and I underline everything to the left of it. On the left side, I write every single thing that's underlined. If any whole number digits are not underlined, I turn them to 0. But if any decimal digits are not underlined, I simply ignore them, as I did in this case. On the right side, I add 1 to the last underlined number. That would turn this into 4.76. Circle the digit to the right. If it's a little kid's school, 0, 1, 2, 3, or 4, it rounds down. If it's a big kid's school, 5, 6, 7, 8, or 9, it rounds up. 3 is a little kid's school. So that meant we rounded down to 4.75. Sometimes the directions won't tell you a place to round to, it will just tell you to round to the place of the underlined number. In this case, the 8 is underlined, that's in the ones column, so technically we're rounding to the ones place, and we do the same thing. We underline the underlined number and everything to the left of it. We write the entire underlined number down on the left side. We add a 1 to the very last digit and write that new number on the right side. We circle the digit to the right of that, and if that's a 0, 1, 2, 3, or 4, we round down. A 5, 6, 7, 8, or 9, we round up. This was a 9, which was a big kid's school number, so we rounded up to 459. When working with money, often the directions will ask us to round to the nearest cent, and that does mean the 1 cent column, so we need to figure out what the 1 cent column is. Once we find the 1 cent column, we can underline that column and everything to the left of it, and then we round as normal. And in this case, the 5 told us that we would round up to $25.40. Remember, in this problem, we changed 39 to 40 because you want to always have the same number of digits. And sometimes in a money problem, the directions will tell you to round to the nearest dollar. That really means round to the ones, nearest 1, or to the nearest $1. So you find that $1 column and you underline everything to the left of it, and then round as normal. In this problem, the 2 told me that I would round down to $534. So hopefully by now you can confidently say, I can use place value to round decimals to a given place. If not, we will be doing more practice in class tomorrow. If you need the help or the review, please ask us. We will be walking around as always to help you. And hopefully by the end of practice, everybody will confidently be able to say this. Good luck with this lesson.